welcome to Ukraine Today. I'm Lilianne. From March 15th throughout March 17th, the Minister of Trade and Development Cooperation of the Netherlands, Ms. Lilianne Ploumen, is on the official visit to Ukraine. And right now, I'm joined by Madam Minister to discuss the outcome of this trip and the initial feedbacks which Madam Minister has. Madam Minister, welcome to Ukraine Today.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for finding the time to talk to us. Madam Minister, you are currently on the official trip to Kyiv. You are talking to the government representatives. You're talking to the businesses. What is your initial feedback of what is the current state of the trade relations between Ukraine and the Netherlands?
Well, we have warm and good relations, but if you look at the volumes, there's room for a lot of improvement. The Netherlands is the second largest investor in Ukraine, but if you look at the trade volumes, both import and export, I think we could do much better. Specifically in the field of agriculture, where Ukraine is the food basket of the world, potentially, and the Netherlands the second largest exporter of agricultural goods and services. So we have not been living up to the fullest potential of our joint mission to feed the world.
A lot of Dutch companies in the agricultural sector are working here, and they are bringing the expertise, the technology which the Netherlands have to Ukrainian businesses, to the Ukrainian farms. So do you see potential for further development and further cooperation between the businesses and between the two countries?
Yeah, I definitely see that, and maybe even more important, the business sector sees many opportunities. The Netherlands, I brought with me a mission from the Netherlands, about 30 companies, mainly in the area of agriculture, and they would not have joined me if they wouldn't have seen many opportunities. There are Dutch firms active here. We, for example, visited Zeelandia, which is a very well-known company in the Netherlands, but they also set up shop here. And in food, in dairy, horticulture, there's a lot of opportunities I would suggest that we can further explore. And obviously the association agreement helps us to smoothen procedures to make trade between the two countries even more easy.
Well, talking about the association agreement, part of the association agreement, the deep and comprehensive free trade area between the EU and Ukraine has come into force on January 1st, 2016, but the EU has opened borders for Ukrainian companies quite some time ago. So what is the initial feedback which the Dutch companies have in light of the implementation of this free trade area?
Yeah, many Dutch companies are yet to explore what it can offer to them. But what we heard today is that looking at the agricultural reforms that have been taking place, the Dutch businesses are clearly seeing progress compared with a few years ago. And what they specifically mention, of course, is the battle against corruption, very important, but also the doing away with bureaucratic procedures that were not really adding value. So they are really seeing some progress, but obviously for the volumes to catch up, we need a bit more time.
Ukrainian people, Ukraine's Western partners are pressing the government for reforms and pressing for these reforms to take place much faster, much quicker, because it's been 2 years since the Euromaidan revolution when everything changed in the country, yet very few people have seen these reforms taking place in as fast manner as people would have liked to see. When you were talking to the government officials, when you were talking to the ministers, are you conveying the same message? Are you conveying that the Western partners, the Dutch people, the Dutch businesses would like to see reforms taking place faster?
Yeah, well, of course, we've been discussing this issue, and I have a great admiration, I would say, for the reforms that have already taken place. I mean, 1/3 of the banks that were not functioning properly have been liquidated. The subsidies that were let me say, igniting corruptions, those have been done away with. So lots of things have happened, and of course all of us, and that includes, I would suggest, my Ukrainian colleague ministers, would like to see things happening faster. But it also has to be done in a proper way. It has to follow the democratic procedures. Parliament has to say yes to it. People have to understand why this is better for Ukraine. So yes, we are pushing and we are seeing progress.
But what are you hearing from the Ukraine government officials when you are pushing for these reforms?
Well, of course, when I talk to the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Jaresko, who has been very incremental, I think, in making sure that reforms in the financial sector are happening, but also that the financial situation of Ukraine has improved. Of course, she also acknowledges that we're not yet there. On the other hand, the Ukrainian people had a difficult 2 years, because reforms also sometimes mean that first it has to become more difficult before it becomes more easy. And of course, as a politician, we also want the people to understand why this is necessary, and that again also has its impact on the pace of the reforms. But reforms are needed, and I'm very pleased to hear that from my Ukrainian colleagues too.
Madam Minister, what is the messages which you're bringing back to the Netherlands, to The Hague, which we'll be discussing with your fellow ministers, with the Prime Minister, as a result of your trip to Ukraine?
Yeah, I would say three things, basically. One, there's lots of opportunities for the Netherlands to do business with Ukraine. And also for us, we have a very open economy. We're very trade-oriented, so it's in our own interest to improve trade relations with Ukraine. My second issue would be that Ukraine has gone through some major reforms, that the fight against corruption is a very hard fight. It's not finished yet, but very good measures and institutions have been put in place. And the third is that Ukrainian people tell me that they feel at home with the European values and that they like to see more cooperation between Europe and the Ukraine.
In less than a month, there'll be a referendum in the Netherlands on whether the Dutch people would like the Dutch government to ratify the EU association agreement with Ukraine. And so far, the recent polls have not been showing that the majority is in favor of that ratification. So is there a feeling among the Dutch people that bringing Ukraine closer to EU is bringing yet another problem to the European family?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of debate now in the Netherlands about this agreement, which I think is very good, because this is agreement not between governments, it's an agreement that should be between people. And for us, I think it's important to show that this agreement is beneficial to Ukraine and to the Netherlands. Dutch businesses are really, as I said, mentioning the progress they see in terms of procedures that we don't need anymore if we have the agreement, which saves them a lot of money. Ukraine is a country on the borders of Europe, and I will tell the Dutch people that especially the young Ukrainians tell me that they fought for this at Maidan Square, that they want to make their own decisions for their own country, and that they feel that this agreement helps them to do that. And that message of a strong people in Ukraine calling for more democracy is something I would suggest that we would really need to embrace, because for us too, democracy is something that we cherish, and we would really like Ukrainian people to live up to their fullest democratic potential. And they tell me, the young people, that being close to Europe helps them to do that.
Do you hope that these messages will help to persuade more Dutch citizens to come on the 6th of April and vote yes?
Well, listen, I will go and vote, and obviously I will vote yes. And I do hope that the young people in the Netherlands, the business community in the Netherlands, really convey the message that this agreement is good for the Netherlands, good for Ukraine, that it will boost trade, and that it will boost the friendship between our people.
Well, Well, these sound like very encouraging messages. Madam Minister, many thanks for finding the time to talk to us today. We were discussing the trade and other relations between Ukraine and the Netherlands with the Minister for Trade and Development Cooperation, Ms. Lilianne Ploumen. I'm Volodymyr Solhub. Thank you for watching Ukraine Today.